一つたった一つのたった一人たった一人の私はここ
Okay, when I started this series, I was not expecting to be crying in the third episode. Like, what the fuck? It's hard to even explain what got to me in this episode, but I did cry. And it wasn't just tears, like I cried. And we'll get into it. We'll get into what happened, but hello everybody, I am PhenomSage, and welcome back to another Ancient Magus Bride episode review. Today we are going to be talking about episode 3, The Balance Distinguishes Not Between Gold and Lead. And wow, that's a mouthful of a title. I'd be really interested to hear what you guys think that title represents of this episode and its content. Me personally, I really don't know what that has to do with the episode itself, but I'm sure once one of you tells me, I'll be like, oh, I'm such an idiot, I should have figured that out from the get-go. There is a line in the episode where Nevin says that they, as dragons, experience the same things that humans do. The joy and pain of living, and the sadness and loneliness of death. So I suppose that title could refer to how, despite them being two different races, they still experience the same emotions and same feelings towards life. And you know what? That sounds really good, so I think that is what it means. Last episode ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, and looking back, a few people said this, and I should have mentioned this in my review, but it was a bit of a rushed cliffhanger. We kind of just got to this location and then, oh, Chise's kidnapped. I wish it was a little bit more build up in that scene, but that's okay because I figured, I don't know if I mentioned this last episode, but I figured that we would be getting a little bit more elaboration on that scene before Chise is taken, and we get a tiny bit more dialogue between Chise and Elias as they're exploring this place before Chise gets kidnapped. And wouldn't you know, the dude who kidnapped her is a good guy, and this was all a prank. Curse you, fake cliffhangers! We find out in this episode that the dude who kidnapped Chise is someone named Lendl, who is the caretaker of the last land of the dragons. He's the one responsible for these dragons and making sure that no outsiders ever come to this place with ill intent. One thing I'm curious about is during the episode, there's a point where Elias actually refers to Lendl as Echoes, and I'm not sure what that refers to. Maybe that's a nickname. Maybe that's a classification of what he is. I don't know, but I just thought that was interesting. Now, my overall review for this episode will mainly consist of one scene, because that's mostly what this episode was. It was one scene with a lot of different elements in it. I heard some people saying that it was slow, or that they thought that we were delving too far into slice of life, but I don't know. If this is slice of life, then I'm completely okay with it, because there was purpose here. There was purpose and emotion, which is all I want out of my slice of life. We meet this elderly dragon named Nevin, who we find out is basically the father/mother of the entire last land of the dragons, all the children. He's basically the last old dragon left. The rest here are children, and I assume that the grown-up dragons have already gone out to find food, and that's what Elias was here for in the first place. And looking at Nevin, you can tell he's dangerously close to death. Like, he is not going to live much longer. And what I thought was really unique about this situation is that the children see that Nevin is almost dead, like he's close to death himself, and are excited about it. They're happy about it, because once a dragon dies, he turns into a tree, vegetates the area, and gives new life. You can tell the dragons have a completely different mentality towards death. In fact, Nevin says himself, dragons live life without regret, so they never feel fear towards death. And I like that perspective on it. I like that death isn't treated as a bad thing in this colony of dragons. It's treated as a good thing, as a wonderful thing. There's a really nice moment where Chise looks around and realizes that all these trees and all these mossed over rock surfaces are actually dragons that had died before. And it turns out that this hits pretty close to home for Chise, because seeing this dragon so close to death, but not fearing it, she thinks back on her life, and we get a little bit more insight into Chise's past and what she had to go through. We even get a vision of her falling off of a rooftop of a school, but Nevin tells us that that was just a vision that she had. She never actually did it. But the important thing here is that she thought about it. She wanted to do it, and that's pretty fucked up development for Chise's character. I know we should have expected it after that first episode. She was basically willing to sell herself into slavery. And honestly, the reason she did that, I would imagine, is because she didn't have the will to go through with her suicide. She couldn't kill herself. She was too scared. And I love the line Nevin says. He says, "The living should not envy the dead," and goes on to talk about her purpose and why she's here. And this is really what Chise needed, because now that she's alive, she has a purpose. She's with Elias, and that in turn affects Elias. Elias would never have found an apprentice if Chise wasn't alive right now. And I think it's beautiful the way that they connected Nevin and Chise as characters and the situations that they're both going through. Now, of course, the scene that I'm talking about that made me cry is the scene where Nevin dies. He returns, as they call it. Nevin uses Chise's power as a slave beggar to have one last flight in his mind. It's just an absolutely beautiful scene. The OST really added to it. And in that, we can see Chise just so fixated on this flight. She's with Nevin. And maybe I'm speculating a little bit too much here, but it just feels like Chise is starting to find her reason to live. Before, she kind of just went with the motions, went with Elias because Elias owns her. But there's this look in her eye that just says so much to me about how she sees the beauty of life and has an appreciation for living. And I really have to just chalk this up to the studio. This scene and how they built up Nevin as a character beforehand, it was just well done. You do not get tears out of me that easily, to the point where I care about this character and I care about their struggle and their situation within the span of like half an episode. That is insane. There's a particular line at the end that it's what basically triggered my tears. Once Chise exits the flight, she realizes that Nevin is dying before her eyes, and Nevin says that Lyndall planted a seed in him. And for some reason, I don't know why this line got to me so much, but he says, "It will produce beautiful white flowers, I'm told." And I don't know why, that just, as soon as I heard that, I stopped tearing up and I just straight up cried. There's just something so innocent about Nevin as a character. He's not a typical old man, wise, sage type character. Like, he feels youthful and innocent almost. He apologizes for looking into Chise's memories. He speculates on the white flowers that will grow from his body. I don't know, man. That just really got to me. They did such a great job building Nevin's character in just such a short amount of time. The only thing I was curious about is that while Nevin is dying, Lyndall shows no emotion whatsoever. And it's really weird, but kind of cool that Lyndall has almost adopted the way of thinking that the dragons do, that this is a good thing. I expected a little bit more of his human side and maybe just a tear or two watching Nevin turn into this tree. But I guess it does make sense that he's not like that. But on the flip side, I wish he did show a little bit more emotion of happiness that Nevin has turned into the tree. Regardless, that's been all from me for this episode of Ancient Magus Bride. Sorry for the shorter-ish video. I mean, like I said, this episode kind of consisted of just one scene. Albeit a great scene, it was a great scene, but it does give me a little less to talk about than I normally would. Although that preview for next episode is looking pretty hype, so I don't know what's going on with that, but I'm ready for next episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for the support, the comments. I love talking to you guys about this series, other series, etc., etc. Stay tuned this Wednesday for my Made in Abyss Chapter 28 review. That should be fun. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that, so that's going to be awesome. And as always, have a good day.